and the fellowship. So thank you for welcoming me here. Let's listen to the gospel story from Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 to 26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?" I live in a tranquil community with walking trails and bike lanes and beaver ponds in a suburb of Portland, Oregon. But when I look out my window beyond the manicured lawns, I see pain in my little cul-de-sac of 14 homes. One couple I know of is ending a 35-year marriage due to infidelity. Another neighbor right across the street recently buried his wife. Another one, catty corner, is going through cancer treatments. And then the one just around the corner is dealing with a daughter who has an undiagnosed debilitating disease. And then directly across from my driveway, we have a recent immigrant family who is feeling isolated as they try to learn English and adjust to a new culture. And I could go on. I often wonder how any of us do it, get through life. We go to work, we walk the dog, we put dinner on the table. Some of us might even show up to church on Sunday morning. To be human is to have our share of pain and suffering. But more often than not, we just don't know what to do with it. I can remember as a child, my mother would not want to celebrate life fully for, in her words, for fear the other shoe would drop. As if there was a judge watching from heaven determining our quotient of joy, and when it was full, the rain of pain would descend. And she believed that to be a good Christian was to lead a life free from pain or sorrow, and that God can only be found in joy. In her mind, to experience suffering was to be forsaken. And underneath this, I have a sense, was a belief that folks who suffer must have done something wrong. So her two options were either to deny that pain with a happy face, or to downplay her joy in fear that it would end up disappointing her in the long run when the other shoe dropped. So she spent most of her life living in a Leave It to Beaver fantasy world, working really hard to numb herself from the reality of her own pain. Now, I don't think my mom is alone in this. As a matter of fact, I have a healthy dose of denial running through my veins as well. And when I get curious about that denial, I realize that it's protecting me from my fears. Fear of being hurt. Fear of really experiencing the depths of pain. Fear that I might actually shrivel up and die if I stopped long enough to take in the depths that life has to offer. You know, the good, the bad, the ugly. After all, who of us wants to face potential pain or discomfort? I have a hunch Peter, one of the first disciples, felt that same way. He was the first to recognize Jesus as the Messiah. He was a key leader in Jesus' inner circle. And it is obvious that he put his hope in Jesus and saw him as the Savior of the Jewish people who were suffering under a tyrannical government. And just when Peter thinks that things are taking off in a politically good direction for the Messiah movement, Jesus talks about his own suffering and death. Needless to say, it was difficult for Peter to get his mind around the idea that this miracle worker with a prophetic voice, who could move crowds of people, who helped people see through the eyes of love, would end up dying a humiliating death on the cross, because all he could see was positive momentum. No wonder we read in the 16th chapter of Matthew's Gospel that as soon as Jesus began to explain to his friends that he would be put to death in Jerusalem, that Peter took him aside and said, "Never. This shall never happen to you, Jesus." And without missing a beat, we're told that Jesus turned to him and said, "Get behind me, Satan! You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, merely human concerns." Whoa! How could Jesus rebuke his faithful friend like that when it's obvious that Peter loved Jesus like a brother and didn't want to see him suffer and die? Surely this was a mistake. Surely this could not be of God. Maybe Jesus just having a bad day. Maybe we could talk some sense into him. But Jesus won't have any of it. As a matter of fact, he then turns to all of his friends and he says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever saves their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." I can just imagine them doing a double take. Did we just hear what we thought we heard? Come on, Jesus. Are you serious? We're fighting a good fight here. We've left our day jobs to help you in the ministry of healing and justice making. We're working for that day when the Jews will be free in the land that the God of Moses promised us. And now you're saying that the way to freedom is through death? Not only yours, but ours? We didn't sign up for that. Indeed, we haven't signed up for this. This is not our idea of what being a Christian is about. Who wants to join a church knowing that they're going to have to carry a cross? I can remember about 15 years ago leading a study with a group of mothers on a book entitled The Dark Night of the Soul. Are any of you familiar with that book? The premise of the book is that we will at some point on our spiritual journey encounter that dark night when we feel confused and forsaken and broken, at the end of our rope in despair, kicked in the stomach, sunk by dread, suffocating in grief. And the writer says that this dark night can be a refining fire that helps us to get clarity about the ultimate meaning of life. And if we let it, it can be an invitation to fall into the embrace of God. Now, it doesn't mean we have to go looking for tragedy, but when it falls upon us, we can allow it to deepen us and transform us instead of fearing it. And during that class, 2 women said, "We haven't signed up for this. And if this is what the spiritual journey is about, forget it. We are happy in our lives just as they are, and who would want this?" So they left the group, never to return. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. The way of the cross certainly counters the prevailing mythos of our time. And I can say, as a person of white privilege, that we are people who not only seek happiness, but expect that it's our human right. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. My parents wanted their children to be happy. I want my children to be happy. We speak in the language of fulfillment and have a sense that it has something to do with the accumulation of beautiful experiences that we can post on Instagram and Facebook. And that we believe in order to be happy, we have to deny suffering. You know, I can speak for me as an American. Most of us don't want to pay more taxes to increase our social safety net. We have yet to significantly change our lifestyles to decrease the effects of carbon in our atmosphere. We live as if the world owes us something. We are focused on our human concerns. And we do this in the life of the church as well. We've convinced ourselves that in order to be the beloved community, we have to be perfect. We can't fail. We shouldn't air our dirty laundry. We really should not disagree with each other or rock the boat in any way that would cause discord. Yeah, we see the decline in the church. We see the aging of the church membership. We see our Sunday school rooms are no longer full. But surely this is not of God. Surely this must be a mistake. We're just having a bad decade. We look to experts to tell us how to wreck the boat. We dream about making the church great again. We echo Peter's plea, say it isn't so, Jesus. Tell us that you will usher in the kingdom of full worship services. And please let us keep everything we love about our lovely church community. We want growth, but we don't want to change. This is a tough ask. To deny our personal preferences, to take up a cross, to turn to the concerns of God, to desire what God desires. I've thought a lot about Peter and about the need for the happily ever after ending and his desire to control the world in order to make that happen. Oh, I want those endings too. I want God to be on my team and pave the way for all good endings. This is a natural part of being human. Father Thomas Keating talks about this as our emotional programming of the false self or the ego self, the part of us that seeks security. We do this through trying to control or exert power over others or situations. We do this as we try to seek affection or esteem from people in our community. We do this in our attempts to change others instead of looking at ourselves. We do this to prevent our own potential suffering or pain. We do this out of fear. We try our best to find our way out of feeling afraid, but this is our dilemma, our stuck place, that Jesus wants us to be liberated from. And Jesus is drawing a clear line in the sand in this passage by showing us through his life and death the way of letting go. If you want to taste eternal freedom, if you really want to drink deeply of life, then you have to let go. Jesus is inviting us to fall into the divine arms of love. And he invites us to discover that our life is woven into God's own life, whose life is mysteriously woven into all the scary things that can and do happen to us as humans on this earth. In other words, I think Jesus is trying to get us to see that life lives us. And then the faithful question becomes, what does life want from me? instead of, what do I want from life? Just this little shift of perspective from us living our lives to life living us can liberate us from fear in the midst of fearful situations. It can soften the hard edges and allow us to relax our tight grip on insisting the way things ought to be. And it can provide us some spaciousness so that we can see that our way is not the only way, nor probably God's way. He shows us through his human frailty and by his death that God is in all of our suffering, that God suffers with the world by revealing a love that will not let go of us when all the chips are down. He shows us that risk and failure and pain and suffering, along with hope and joy, are all a way of life. And to grasp only the good stuff is to forfeit our soul. He says, what can anyone give in exchange for our soul? There is something so beautiful and freeing about this. I call it painfully good. So the more we try to hold on to that illusion that we can squeak through this life without feeling pain or despair, the smaller and more constricted our life becomes. And we build a fortress and aim our guns at anything that can penetrate our walls of protection. And then we overreact, or we defend, or we retreat. And most times we aren't even aware that we're doing it, because this has become our norm state. And Jesus is inviting us to look again, to question everything, to reorient our lives to God, to let go so our souls can come out and play. You see, there's a light that shines beyond all that fear. It's our diamond essence, our spiritual self, our soul. And the more we can let go of anything that's less than God's love, the more that light shines. It's then that, as William Stafford so eloquently pens, that we can wake, and look out. No guarantees in this life, but some bonuses, like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. This is the counterintuitive way of Jesus. It's the counterintuitive way to new life for us individually as well as the church. And this, my dear friends, is the hero's journey. It takes tremendous courage that is born of trust, that regardless of what happens in our life, we are held in the arms of love that will never abandon us. This can be messy and filled with grief as we confront the reality of our lives as well as the reality of our church. But it's holy work. It's filled with beauty and grace. You see, we're so invincibly precious in our frailty. My daughter, who's going to be 24 next month, introduced me to a group of young men who got together 3 years ago to create a positive message of empowerment and love in our divisive world. And they use social media and YouTube to get their message out to mostly millennials like themselves, and they're called Yes Theory. They first began by recording one thing a day for 30 days that demonstrated them facing their fears. And they called it Project Why Not, a play of words on their Generation Y. And after that, they expanded their efforts to continually experiment with what it means to move beyond their fears. Because they came to know that fear is the root of hate and the opposite of love. So after the Paris bombing, they stood in the Montreal train station with T-shirts that had their name and the country they were from. One is from Egypt, one's from Turkey, One's from the United States. One is from Paris, but lives here in Canada. They made this sign that said, "We're brothers," and that love prevails. And that video went viral, and now they have 2 million followers. And they promote this love over fear in all they do. They invite their followers to seek discomfort as a way to move beyond their fear. They want people to be able to say yes to life, to have the courage to face whatever life brings them. They are a light in the darkness of a divisive and fearful world. Amar, one of the friends from Egypt, got a letter from his father on his 24th birthday this past year, giving him an ultimatum. Either you come back to Egypt, or I will disown you. This is what happens next.
The moment that scared me the most since we started this project just happened last night. It's like I always knew that it will come where I will have to make the decision between either my family or what we're doing here. Every part of this journey has been divine, and I feel supported in the most supernatural way. So I know that what we stand for and the purpose that we're bringing this world is going to be just worth just making the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Just choosing this over my family and choosing you guys over my family. It's like the epitome of that generational divide and just complete lack of the ability to create a middle ground in any kind of conversation, because he sees what I love the most as evil. And he sees my best friends as the bad friends.
Just know that I'm probably one out of millions who are from the same position. That's why I just can't stop here.
Just creating something different, and just a different path for just the generation to come.
Love you, boys. What did you do?
You're my family now. You've always been.
I want my son Omar back. Leave this evil and perverted group of yours and find another job, or come back to Egypt immediately. If you don't do that, then I won't accept you as my son, or in my life at all for that matter. You've caused so much harm for your family and relatives. Shame on you. Wake up before it's too late. I won't accept any other outcome except for what I stated above. These were some of the things my dad mentioned to me in his letter a few days ago on my 24th birthday. And before you form any opinions about my dad or what kind of man he is, I just want you to know that every word you just heard comes from a place of love and need to protect me. My dad has provided me with all the love and support that I could possibly ask for throughout my entire life, but now it's become too hard for him to accept the path that I've taken. I've done everything a good Muslim son shouldn't do in his eyes. I've dropped out of full scholarship to university to pursue a career that he doesn't understand. I've chosen not to return to Egypt to fulfill my military service as he did. I've questioned my culture's blind traditions, and I've questioned him. And because I didn't meet his expectations for who his son should be, he's now choosing to disown me for the path that I've chosen. This is obviously a very personal letter about a very sensitive subject, so you might be wondering why I'm telling you all of this. I simply know that I cannot be the only one stuck in this position, and there's someone out there who needs to hear this. Someone who's had their dreams rejected by those they love the most. And I just know how painful it is to live through that experience. So I want you to know that you're not alone. And as long as you're letting purpose steer your life forward, then know that every bit of pain that we go through is just an inevitable component to any success we want to accomplish. And that is truly the essence of seeking discomfort. Despite what anyone tells you who you should be, you have the right to determine the life you want to live. So don't live somebody else's dream. Just focus on finding and living yours. I still haven't responded to my dad's letter because, quite honestly, I don't know how to communicate to him something that he just can't relate to. I completely understand his world because I lived it, but he just can't understand mine. Obviously, that's not his fault, and I would never blame him for it, but my dad has made his decision, and here's mine. I've been working really hard for the past 3 years, along with my best friends, to put out a message that we truly think that is much needed in today's world. I'm committed to spreading this message of love to the day I die, and nothing shall stop that. بابا ربنا يخليك لينا ويديك طول العمر، وأنا أتمنى إن في يوم من الأيام حضرتك تقدر تتقبل وتتحمل قراري. Thank you for watching and supporting us through this crazy journey. Be who you are and walk freely.
Amazing, isn't it? How compassion and love flow through human frailty. By revealing his brokenness, we see his light, his diamond essence, his soul. What would happen if we too trusted in that infinite flow of compassion and love as we sit in our own pain? As we witness the pain of the world. This is our call as a church in times such as these. To be, as Margaret Wheatley says, grace-filled warriors for the human spirit. Thank God we have Jesus to show us the way. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything.